My name's Katrina Bolton. I'm the Director of Estates at Goldsmiths, and I'm here today to introduce our proposals for the Playtower site. We're hugely excited by the potential that's offered by the site, and anybody who might know our existing campus probably is aware that this building would fit very comfortably within our existing portfolio of buildings. It even has some ready-made graffiti for us, which I think could be seen to be, sorry, it sounded a bit like feedback there, fitting in very well with our existing campus. Our proposal is centred around the relocation of the university's renowned postgraduate arts courses to the restored Playtower site and the creation of a dedicated and purpose-built arts centre to house both the growing master's programmes but also a unique range of public engagement programmes, short courses, summer schools, and education outreach. Primarily, this would see, obviously, the sensitive restoration of the main pool hall and the adjacent spaces, and the reinstatement of the demolished rear pool to provide large, flexible studio spaces with the potential to further extend into the grounds of the site, should programmes be successful. The building can be readily adapted to the new uses with minimal risk to the existing architectural heritage, and it would ensure its sustainable future. And it would give a very attractive offer both to our students and to the local community in a unique building. I'm going to hand over now to my colleagues Alan Francis of Gaunt Francis Architects, who will describe our proposals for the building in more detail, and then to Richard Noble, who's the head of the art department at Goldsmiths, to explain our vision for the site. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I thought it'd be worth, do I use the arrows here to move them? Okay, thank you. I thought it'd be worth just touching a bit to start on, and I'm sure if you're at the back, you probably can't see any of these slides at all, really, but so you'll have to bear with me a bit about some of the images which I'm going to show, particularly the plans, which are very small, I'm sorry, on the screen like this from your distance, but let's start. I thought we'd start by just talking a little bit about what's important about this building. The building itself, I'll come on to talk about, but actually there's two other things, which is the architect who designed it and the nature of this building in your community. The architect who designed it, Wilson Sons and Oldwinkle. We don't know much about Wilson and Sons, but we know quite a bit about Thomas Oldwinkle, who was a local chap. He lived in Dacre Road down in just this side of Sydenham, and he was the architect for quite a few buildings. He obviously had good connections. He was taking advantage of the Baths and Warehouse and Wash Houses Act of 1846. So he became, probably not famous is not the right word, but he became pretty preeminent in public and institutional buildings. He did Forest Hill Baths, he did the Brook Hospital at Shooters Hill, and these baths, which apart from the big baths in Paddington, were the largest baths of their time. And we were talking about an age when health was a major critical issue for the community. So it became an important building. And this building was his finest. It's one of only two which survive, and maybe three which survive his actually. This one in Irving Street in Soho, and this building. And because of its history, and because of him as an architect, it's got particular importance. It's also got importance to you, of course, in the community here, because it's part of the conservation area and it's part of an important group of buildings. If you look at the way it works with this building we're in, with the fire station, with the church, with the school, you can draw a ring around those buildings, which equates pretty closely to the conservation area boundary. And there's an Edwardian group of buildings which work very well together in that context. And this is a particularly proud one. And it's proud on the frontage, with the tower it has and the entrance to the building. In the past, of course, that entrance was the entrance for men. The women's entrance to the baths was down the right-hand side and further back to that. And I'll talk a little bit about how we reuse that. And it had its own setting and its own garden. And as Gavin was saying earlier, the building is in some state of disrepair now. The big hall, The main pool hall, the first-class pool hall, where only those expensive first-class people went, is still there, but it's not in great nick. A lot of the balconies have gone completely altogether, but the balustrading is saved. It's a building that can be put back into good use. The gable end of it is not in a good state because the secondary pool used to prop it up structurally, so now the secondary pool has gone. There's a bit of work needed to make sure that the end gable wall of that building doesn't collapse. And this other part of the building, this is a light well into the center of one of the original waiting rooms for the bars. And that roof light there is in very poor condition indeed, for instance. So there's a lot of repair work needed to this building, a considerable amount, just to keep it in the right sort of frame. There's also curious spaces. This is the courtyard in the center of the building, which has a truss remaining on it. The rest of it is gone. The glazed roof has gone, which was over it, albeit that the glazed roof was at a higher level, so the truss must have belonged to a different roof over that courtyard in the first place. So there's some curious bits of historical aspects about how the building was developed. And then, of course, the secondary pool, gone in the fire in 2006. Not much left of it now. But the perimeter wall still stands, which we thought was quite interesting. And, of course, the tower itself. Up in the tower, the first floor room, the floor is in a desperate state. So there's a lot of work to do on this.
I'm going to have Gav here.
Oh, Gavin. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And it was such a centre of the community that its use after the baths closed became very good. There was a gym, as everyone knows. There's some interesting photographs of its use and a terrific photograph of when it was in use as a pool. So it was a big, strong focal point of the community, and we'd like to keep it so. So the intention here is it becomes, gosh, can you see that at all? Probably not. You'd have to imagine this drawing now I'm going to describe to you. So what we'd hope it becomes is a centre of the community, and the interesting thing about the site is it's got a lot of connections to the buildings around it, and we're hoping to open that up a bit. I'll explain to you more in a second. It's very close to this building. It has a nice space next to it. It has the St. Mary's churchyard to the south. So here we are. The secondary pool at the bottom, which is gone, but the perimeter walls exist. The main pool to the left-hand side, and then really the ancillary rooms that supported the uses of the public space. And the courtyard you can see in the middle of that plan. So I'm going to skip now some of these plans. That's the first floor plan and the basement. So the real intention we have here is in 3 phases of development. What we'd like to do, imagine you're seeing this drawing in perfect clarity now, and I'm going to explain to you what we're going to do. We're going to make the courtyard in the center of that building a cafe space for the public and a public space which you can go into as a member of the public, as well as it operating for Goldsmiths students. There's going to be 177 student art spaces in the building. Firstly, in the main existing pool to the left-hand side, and then also in a new pool, which we're going to recreate, not a pool, a new room, a new teaching studio, which we're going to recreate in the area of the secondary pool. And what we'd like to do is to keep the existing walls and build a new shell of a new building within them and break some openings into them to do that. What we'd also like to do is to break an opening into the St. Mary's churchyard to the south. And that yellow dotted line, if you could see the rest of the plan, you'd understand that yellow dotted line is a new public thoroughfare that we'd like to create through this site, because actually it's quite a long way around if you're walking around this site. And bringing people in, we think, will introduce some vitality into the whole life of the building. It'll be a fabulous link across the whole site here into the churchyard and into where the school is. So if you live north of Ladywell Road and you'd like to get to the school, this will be a terrific link going through it, right through the centre of the site. And it will also mean that some of the students who will use the old female entrance into the bars, that will become a main entrance into the building as well, and you'll come straight into some of the studio spaces for student direct access there. Then in a phase 2, we'd like to build where the water tower is. We've had to move the water tank. We're going to move that, get rid of the water tank altogether, and to enable us to create the link into the churchyard. And then that means we can build some more studio space as well as a garden. Imagine a beautiful garden for the students and a sculpture court to the bottom southwest corner of that plan. as you can't see the plan, it's worth me you might get a bit more viewing of that one. So the shaded areas in purple there are going to be the areas accessible to the public. So there'll be the main entrance at the top, and we see the first floor at the front of the building, which was the old superintendent's apartment for the baths. That becomes meeting rooms for the public, and the rest of those rooms make ideal teaching spaces for the university. So for the university, it's a central cafe, it's teaching spaces, it's studio spaces for students, and a lot of that will be funded partly by some development in the grounds. Now, we haven't gone into exactly what that development is, but it's probably a mix of some workspaces and some student rooms in the grounds, in the open grounds between the Coroner's Court building and the main bars building itself. It's tricky. That's going to be a very tricky building in there, and I'm sure everyone tonight will say the same thing. The Conservation Management Plan, it's a very detailed, very good document here. I've got a copy of it here, setting out what's of considerable significance here and what's of moderate significance to the site and the buildings around it. And we all know that the setting of this building is quite important. So putting something new between the Coroner's Court and this building is going to be a challenge. But I think there's scope to do it, and if it means that enabling development, as Gavin explained earlier, will help fund the scheme itself, then all for the good, it seems to us. And so there's the view. You can see it for the entrance gates with the new building on the right, and you can see you could walk right the way through to St Mary's Churchyard beyond, and then potentially some new development to the left-hand side there. And then the cafe, we see that as being a double-height space. At the moment, it lights the basement. We want to use that basement for more studio rooms for students. And so we're going to install a new floor, a ground floor level in the courtyard, and then lift, and essentially what we're doing is lifting the old glazed roof up to second floor level, so there'll be a double height space to create a new centerpiece to the building. And the main pool area itself will make a fabulous studio space for the university, which already has done it, actually, in a very similar space in Lorry Grove Baths. Been operating now for about 20 years, if many people don't know that. It's not far off the size of this building. It makes a fabulous space for students, and that's exactly how we envisage this space will be done here. I won't explain the section, it's too far detailed and you probably won't be able to see it. So I'm going to hand over to Richard now, the head of the arts department.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Noble. I'm the head of the art department at Goldsmiths College. I don't know if any of you know what the art department at Goldsmiths College is, but it's one of the leading art departments in the world. We bring students from all over the world to Lewisham, and we have very ambitious aspirations for the Ladywell Playtower. What we want to do is build a unique kind of community that includes all our postgraduate programs in fine art, curating, artist film, art and performance, and we want to bring them here and house them in the reconstruction of the Playtower as it was just described. But we also want to use the site to build subsidized studios for professional artists, and also to create some fabrication and fabrication rooms and editing sites and so on, that will create a kind of interconnected community of students, artist educators, and professional artists. And the other key element of this for us is that the community, this interconnected community has a relationship with the community around Ladywell. So there's basically three sort of parts of the vision. The first is the development of a world-class facility for teaching and research in fine art, which we have a very strong track record at doing and know we can do here. The second part is the development of studio space for up to, I think initially 20 artists, but it could rise to 50 artists depending on how much space we can accommodate. These people would become part of the community as teachers, as educators, and as people who are participating in our outward-facing community engagement. And then the third part of it is the community engagement. We think there will be basically three parts to this. The first part will have to do with art education for schools. Now, currently at Goldsmiths, we're building a contemporary art gallery called the Goldsmiths Center for Contemporary Art. It's a unique design in a bathhouse, in a reconstruction of a derelict part of a bathhouse. And that gallery is going to be running programs for local schools, which we would like to run both from our main site and also from this site. Now, Lewisham, like all boroughs, struggles with art education in its schools, and we have the skills and abilities both in the art department and in the education department to develop a very sophisticated relationship with local primary and secondary schools. And we believe that this can be a major resource for the educational community in Lewisham. Another part of what we want to do is to develop short courses for people in the community at a reasonable subsidized price. These will be related to art, but they can have to do with drawing, casting, metalwork, ceramics, digital editing, photography, film, the whole range of things that we do in our educational processes, we can turn into training for people who are interested in some aspect of contemporary art. And then another part of the community engagement beyond education is this thing about studio provision. There are not enough artist studios in London. There are not enough artist studios in South London, and Southeast London particularly, and many of them are being gobbled up by developers. As this part of the city starts to be more the subject of developers' interests, artist studios are disappearing. So we want to partner with an organization called Studio Makers, who are concerned to replace the thousands of studios that are disappearing in London with more studios. And so we want to be partners with them to create a studio environment here at Ladywell. And this will be for younger artists. The studios will be subsidized, and they will play a role in helping us build an amazing educational institution, both for ourselves and for the community of Lewisham. And I guess the third sort of social benefit of this plan for the community is that we will be bringing something in the neighborhood of 250 people here to work. And those people will need opportunity, they will need suppliers, they will need places to eat, they will need places to go and hang out, and they will spend a great deal of money over time. So there will be jobs created both here in the site, but also in the area. There will be more commercial activity, and all of this will be done in a very sort of low impact way. No cars, mainly cyclists. We might have a couple of trucks to move work back and forth between our sites, but we're not talking about bringing large numbers of people either to live or to put pressure on services here. We're talking about bringing people who are going to come here and work and spend money and create jobs. So in that sense, we see this as a real win-win opportunity. We can make something really amazing here at Ladywell. And yeah, we really hope that we can get your support for that. Thanks very much.
Okay, well, I'm really loud again. Yeah, we're going to do some Q&A now. So if anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask from the team at Goldsmiths, raise your hands. I'm going to send Andy out with this mic to take your questions, and we'll see if we can get them answered.
Hello, thank you for that presentation. I thought it was very good. On the plan showing the area for public access, the actual round tower area was shaded. Do you envisage the public accessing in the actual tower part of the building?
Well, if you give the tower over to artists, they will find ways to make it interesting and for the public to have access to that stuff. So it could be experiments in, I don't know, wind tunneling or It could be making exhibitions, light shows, a whole range of things. I mean, I think, I'm not the architect, but I think the tower is a tricky bit. I mean, what kind of roof do you put on it? And I think there's quite a lot of problems with the structure of it. But, you know, I think initially we will create a space and we will offer people the opportunity to do things in that space. Best I can say. Okay.
Hello, I'm actually quite interested in the parking for the people who will be using the building. Obviously, if it's going to be an art department, you're going to be transporting paintings or sculpture, whatever, from one place to another. Where is that on the plans? And also, I was wondering about disabled access.
Well, initially we're thinking about 2 trucks. We already have 1 truck, and we're thinking about getting another truck to move work between our fabrication labs in where we are in the main site to here. It might grow to 3 or possibly 4 trucks, but we would find parking on the site. We're not talking about taking up any parking spots on the street.
Actually, no, I can see. I'm just a bit worried about the amount of equipment and stuff that you'd have. You actually do need to have a bit of parking. And I'm also wondering about people who are disabled. There is very little parking in the area if they want to attend any of your courses.
Well, we would have a site where we can drive in, and I think we are statutorily obliged to make it accessible to people who are disabled. So, I mean, you know, in my head, we have a bus. Sorry?
It's one thing to have it accessible, it's actually getting here as well. If people from, I just wondered if they came by car, where they would actually park for some of the courses that you might be running.
That's a difficult question to answer right now. I mean, I'm guessing that we will have some kind of bus that may come from the main site here. It's about a 15-minute drive. There is parking on the main site, so let's say 3 people who are disabled sign up for a drawing course. They might have to go to the main site and then be transferred here. That would be an option. But we're mindful of the fact that we don't want to produce a situation where we're bringing lots of vehicles into a residential area. We want people to come as far as possible.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you there. It's just that I find a lot of proposals that are being put forward within this area seem to not really take into account people who are disabled and who need to get out, who may really benefit from the courses that you will be running.
Sure. No, we're very mindful of that.
We will provide disabled parking on the site. Obviously, it would probably be limited to 1 or 2 spaces, but it would be in discussion.
As long as there is some,
Yes.
just like I know from having seen other buildings within Lewisham, they don't seem to get much.
Yeah, it is, I can tell you from the art gallery that we're building, it's a genuine challenge to turn 19th century buildings into this, buildings that are accessible to disabled people. But we did it really successfully there, and I'm certain we can do it here.
Hello. I wanted to ask how crucial is the building in between the sort of Coroner's Court building and the Playtower to your business plan that goes ahead? And are you relying on any grant funding, or how are your proposals funded?
Well, we will be relying on applications to the Heritage Lottery Fund and to the Mayor's Office and a range of other social bodies, as any project of this scale would necessarily do. But we're also partnering with the Studio Makers Organization, an organization called the Good Investment Fund, who are very interested in developing this kind of social development particularly for studios. And our anticipation is that they will want to build studio spaces in this gap, but within the regulations laid down by the English Heritage and Lewisham and so on. part of that will probably also involve some kind of fabrication at the back. So we're looking at this as the third stage of the development, but it may actually, for financial reasons, end up being done concurrently with the first stage. So we will be looking for outside investment for the project.
Hi, is this facility to cater for existing student numbers, or are you looking to bring in additional students? Are you moving students and faculties from another campus to house them here with better facilities, or are you looking at bringing in more and more people?
Well, we are moving people, a considerable number of people here from another site, or we would do. But we would also be growing the cohort by about, between 50 and 100 students. It depends on what kinds of courses they're doing and how much money we realize from the courses. But we're not talking about a massive increase in the number. So, the average MA course that we offer as a one-year course has between 20 and 30 students on it. So if we brought on 2 new courses, that would be something like 50 students. We don't have plans. We have never been a department that just radically expands. We have absolute demand for everything we offer, but we're very careful about the profile of what we offer. And so we have one large MFA fine art course which has 100 students on it. We have a curating course which has about 45. And we've just started an MA in art film, which will have 25. So those students will all be coming here. And then we have plans for one in film and performance, and also probably one in art business, although we haven't figured it out. So yes, we see this as scope for development for our courses, but only in the sense that we want to make this community more interesting and more dynamic as a creative and intellectual space. It's not about creating some mass education thing. We don't do that. We're one of the last ones, actually, in the city that doesn't do that. So,
could you say a bit more about the restoration of the front of the building, particularly the view from the street, which is what most of us see? I notice on that diagram, for instance, you haven't put back the witch's hat on the tower, which I personally would like to see.
Yes, we're very keen on quite a major restoration of that frontage. It is the public face of the building. It's where the community uses are going to be centered. We haven't gone for the conical roof reconstruction, no. And only for the moment, I suppose, that it's a question mark, and we haven't got any massively committed ideas to that. One thought we have is that maybe we should introduce some kind of glazed lantern, a beacon, at the top of what exists there at the moment, instead of a conical tower. And we might do that in glass and backlight it from below as a kind of signature point for the building, a focus for the building in the area. And if you look at it, if this drawing was more legible, you'd see it. But on the website of Lewisham, I'm sure you can see that. So it's an idea that we have that we would reintroduce a top to that tower, but in a different form, signaling a bit of a change of the building and something a bit more contemporary in how we handle it. And it's literally meant as a beacon only. It's not something we've pored over for days, I would admit. But I just worry about the idea of introducing something to the building which will cost a considerable amount of money to put back, which has no use within it other than to recreate what it was there originally. And I struggle, if I'm really honest, I struggle with the scale of that hat when it was on there. And I don't mind the tower we have now. It's a strange feeling I have about that. And therefore we were thinking that a different hat to signal a change in the building might be appropriate.
Thank you. A couple of things, and just building on, you said you're going to do a comprehensive restoration of the frontage, and I'd be grateful if subsequent speakers to address both the tower hat, which you already have, but also restoring the street railings to the front and the stained glass into the front windows. And the final thing is, I think it's very important for us as a community to understand what you have planned for the site between the Coroner's Court and the Playtower before we can give our support to anything, because it's very important to see those plans, because that at the moment could be anything. And you could call it enabling development, but obviously there's already a substantial amount of enabling development on the second-class pool, which would be rebuilt.
Yeah, well, I can quite see that. I think our ideas for new development in the centre of the site have yet to be realised. I accept that. I think the challenge in that site will be you have I've forgotten the name of it now, but you have the new residential development at the back, which when you're at the front of the site at the moment, the lime trees and the sycamores, they hide that development at the back. The setting of this building is interesting, isn't it? The fountain that used to hold the parapet stones for the old well in Ladywell used to sit in the frontage of this site in its own garden. Do we recreate the garden there and push any development back against the back wall, which is the perimeter wall to that residential development? But if we do that, how far that development is so close to our boundary wall, how far away can we get to that without impinging on the residents of that building? So there's real challenges in how you can put new development in that space. At the moment, we don't have a definitive brief as an architect for that. There's plenty of ideas that Goldsmiths have for that, but it's a question of whether we do. At one stage, we were going to look at two buildings, which I think the plans show at the moment, one at the front of the site and one at the back, with a link through which corresponds with the setting of the mortuary and the coroner's court beyond that, or whether this, because of the setting of the building and the old garden, has to be something which is concentrated more at the rear of the site. I think there's some challenges and question marks there.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Goldsmiths.